Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Sideline Breakdown. I'm Carl, your host, and we're going to be diving into another preview for this weekend's South African Derby weekend. Entertaining rugby and some interesting selections when it comes to the teams that were chosen. Bulls going very strong, Sharks keeping a pretty similar team with a couple of changes here and there. Stormers making a number of changes as well as the Lions. So awesome weekend of rugby ahead, and we're going to be diving straight into the Stormers versus the Lions, which will be the first game in Cape Town. And spoiler alert, I do expect the Stormers win there. A couple of changes, but still think they should be strong enough to hold off a young, um, potentially dangerous Lions side. But again, I think the Stormers have enough quality to see the game through. Looking at the teams, we see Mkunu dropping to the bench. I think he's formed a good partnership over the last couple of weekends. Stormers have been very dominant up front, and a good partnership with Igu Venter as well as Neetling Koshia. But he does drop down to the bench, and Matongo does get his opportunity. I'm sure he'll be wanting to grab that with both hands. I see Salman Murat keeping his position as captain, of course, and Ruben van Heerden coming into the side. I'm sure Stormers fans will be extremely happy about that. Good player, workhorse, fantastic in the lineouts, really, really solid player. So, uh, really good option there at 5 for the Stormers, and good to see him back. The trusty Paul de Villiers at 6. I mean, I don't think we can praise this guy enough. He's had an absolutely awesome start to this season and this campaign. And he's actually carrying on his form from the Currie Cup, but really, really good player. And interesting selection at 7. We have C. Marcel Tennyson coming into the starting lineup with Ben Jason Dixon dropping to the bench. I'm not sure if Dobson is thinking about a kind of like a bomb squad scenario for the Stormers. Um, Stormers obviously going with a 6-2 split on the bench, so not sure if that's Dobson's thinking and wanting to bring on the heavy artillery in the second half. But Marcel Tennyson, interesting selection. Obviously, does have an engine on him, works hard. I don't think, in terms of his physicalities, as physical as Ben Jason, but you know, solid enough option, I suppose. And it's going to be interesting to see how he takes his opportunity this weekend. And then Evan Rose keeping his position at eighth man. Heading into the back line, we have Kobus Reinach and Yuri Matia as your 9-10 combination for this weekend. Sasha Feinberg and Komuzulu with a slight knock. Dobson did mention that he was going to be okay for the Bulls game, so nothing major. Good to see. Obviously, I think he's done quite well with his injuries so far. Mr. Rock Norris and I have mentioned, especially in the beginning of his Stormers career when he initially broke through. I thought he did struggle a bit with his injuries. It's all good and well being a fantastic player, but you look at someone like Johan Goosen who's been plagued with injuries, top quality player, but injuries a massive problem. So um, glad to see it's nothing major. But Yuri Matia does come into the 10. I actually thought Clinton Swart had a fantastic game for the Stormers the other weekend, and I'm sure he'll be disappointed not to be considered for this game. Good to see that the Stormers do have options at 10. Into the back line, or further into the back line, we have Zas, still with Jonathan Roach, Dylan Mort, Warwick Kalant. And the only change being, or not the only change, but um, Ruanel dropping out, unfortunately, due to injury. Dobson again mentioning that it is more significant, and Ruanel will be out for unforeseen amount of time. But Wandasile Simalani does come into the 13, where I do think he is better. Obviously, we've seen him deployed at fullback, but I think 13 is his more natural position. Struggles for me a bit on defense, but attack, I don't think you can take away that he is a dangerous player on attack. But we'll see how the combinations work out for the Stormers. Moving on to the bench, we see obviously mentioned Mkunu moving to the bench, 6-2 split. Audrey Smith and JD Schickeling again on the bench, another double lock combination for the Stormers there. Interesting to go with that. Obviously, I know Rossi does kind of go with almost a similar combination, sometimes with Franco Mostert, who obviously can cover 7 as well. But interesting tactics there from Dobbo. Not the first time we've seen it, um, but good to see those on the bench. I think Dobson is certainly trying to get a certain um, bomb squad mentality going there. We then see Stefan Ungara, and speaking of injuries, Solomon Hotzenberg, good player, lot of gas. I think another example of a good player who really struggles with injury and just can't get a good run in, can play wing. I think he's actually a pretty good option at outside centre when fit for the Stormers, but unfortunately someone who really does struggle with injuries. Moving on to the Lions. Um, Obviously, in terms of the Lions, the quality, I don't think can really be matched with the Stormers. Unfortunately, they do have their really good players, but I think, like I mentioned, Stormers in Cape Town with the squad that they have, I think it's going to be very tough for the Lions in this game. But I mean, the Lions, they can kind of have a free throw at it. They play some good running rugby at times, but some very dangerous players. So we'll certainly see how they go. But the front row of SJ Kotze, PJ Botha, and Klabakanye, obviously the Springbok. I mean, we'll see how they front up against a very strong and dominant Stormers front row. Should be quite interesting, but I do foresee a dominant performance from the Stormers. Etienne Oosthuizen and Notnagel in the locks. Jared Keynes, Ruan Venter, I think, is a fantastic player. Another one just kind of struggled with injuries, but very strong with ball in hand, good on defense. So a very good option for the Lions there. Frankie Horn captaining the side. Moving on to the back line, Mono van der Berg and Chris Smith. No surprises there. Edouard Keita, Bronson Mills and Erich Cornea. Surprising pick at outside centre, but I suppose Lions don't really have many options at outside centre with Henku van Wyk still not available. Kelly Mpeku, who I think a very dangerous player when he gets going. And then Kewan Horn, fantastic fullback and probably the Lions' best player, if you're asking me. Dangerous on the counter attack, good in the air, good kicking game on him. So I think he'll have to be on his A game if the Lions are going to stand a chance against Stormers. Onto the bench here, Franco Marais, Eddie Davids, RF Skuman, Dylan Schablom, Darren Landsberg, Simat Loma, Nico Stein, and then Richard Creel, who obviously is an option, fullback, wing, as well as centre. So, like I said, decent enough team. I think it'll be quite interesting to see how they go against the Stormers. Moving on to the next game, and I think probably out of the South African derbies this weekend, certainly the pick of the two games, which is quite funny considering the form that both these teams are in. So I think we'll start off with the Bulls, obviously in Durban. I heard it is a sellout crowd, so the Bulls certainly have to bring the A game. Considering, I mean, with that being said, I think there's a lot of Bull supporters scattered across South Africa. So we'll see how many Bull supporters actually show up. But again, going to be an interesting game, and I think it's fantastic to see a packed stadium for a South African derby for one of the club games. So awesome to see. Anyways, diving into the team, absolute units of front row, all Springbok, Gerard Steenkamp, Johan Grobbelaar, and then Volku Lou, who arguably is one of the best tight head props in the world at the moment. So yeah, scrum time. I think the Sharks potentially are gonna really struggle a little bit. Although obviously I think they do have some decent players there, but tough game for them. Moving to the locks, Cobus Wisa and JF van Heerden. Joe van Heerden, I think one of the consistent performers for the Bulls this season so far. Cobus Visa has had an up and down season so far, but I think he is a really good player. So let's hope he can bring the form back that actually saw him being picked for the Springboks. So John Joe Rudolph, probably one of the unsung heroes for the Bulls this season. I think had a good season so far. Obviously, not one of your star names that you'd probably put on your team sheet, but one of those guys at the moment who is probably undroppable considering the form that the Bulls are in. Ulrich Low captaining the side, moving from eighth man to the flank position. I think actually seven is in my opinion his best position, so really good to see him there. And then the youngster JJ Tron, which we did mention earlier in the week that these a lot of these young players haven't really been getting their opportunity thus far. But good to see JJ Tron at 8, and I think if he can put in a good performance, considering again the form of the Bulls, he'll certainly be a good shout for that number 8 position. And especially when Cameron Honeycomb comes back, he'll certainly want to be at least putting the pressure on Cameron Honeycomb when it comes to 8th man. Moving to the back line, we see Ambrose Papier getting his starting position back. I think the best scrum of the Bulls have, combination with Handré Pollard. Obviously, again, good to see Handré Pollard at 10. I think the Bulls have struggled with fly half over the last couple of months, actually. We've seen Keegan Johannes being deployed there. Cade Voliter had an absolute shocker last weekend, so good to see Andre there. Stevino Jacobs, I think he's actually having a very good season so far. Didn't get much of a shot under Jake White. Again, injuries. He obviously started well under Jake White as well. Injuries didn't do him very well, and from there couldn't really get into the team with a number of stars, putting their hand up. Kanan Moody, Curtly Arendse, Sebastian de Klerk coming into the side. So good to see him getting a run of games, and let's hope he can really fight for his position. I think he's got a lot of good attributes. He's very strong with ball in hand, good step. He's got a lot of gas. So one area of his game that I think he can work on is his aerial game. Other than that, very solid player. Moving into the centers, which I think, in personally, is a massive problem. Harold Forster, who really hasn't had a good time of it over I would argue, the last 2 years. He struggles for me at inside center. He really doesn't have a very good distribution game, and I think he's very selfish with the ball. So yeah, on his outside, he's the person who I think should be in the 12 jersey. We see David Creel at 13. I think he's played his best rugby at inside centre and good on defence. Reasonably quick, reasonably strong with ball in hand, and I think inside centre is honestly his position. But he is at outside centre, so let's hope that centre combination can do quite well. Then we see the man in form for the Bulls, Sebastian de Klerk at 14, and then Willie Leroux at fullback. I think I've had my say on Willie Leroux enough, so I think we'll leave that for now. Moving on to the bench, Akker van der Merwe drops down to the bench from last weekend's game. Jan Hendrik Wessels, fantastic to see him back. I'm sure he'll be wanting to make amends. Not that I think he necessarily did anything wrong. That can neither be confirmed nor denied. But great to see him back. Obviously, option at hooker as well as loose head prop. Strong player, very mobile, so good to see him back. Within Simukunu, Bernard Ludwig dropping down from the starting lineup to the bench. Another option that you can put at lock as well. As well as in your loose trio, Nizam Kaur, Paul de Wet, Stedman Gans, and then Devin Williams. So a reasonably strong side for the Bulls. A lot of Springboks coming back. I think the Bulls, what they would want to rectify is the second half performances, which I think has been substandard. We started well in the first half and then for some reason dropped off massively in the second half, and that's when teams punish us. And I think it's been like that from the beginning, from when Ackermans actually took over. I remember the first game in the Curry Cup. I can't remember who the Bulls played, but we looked brilliant in the first half. You know, we're running the teams ragged, and second half they just put an absolute clinic on and came back to. Bulls still won the game, but it was much closer than it should have been. And it seems to be a trend that Johan Ackerman can't really sort out for whatever reason. So I think the Bulls be wanting to look to rectify that this weekend. So yeah, diving into the Sharks team, we have Kanyani, Bongyum Banambi, and then Handru Jacobs as your front three. Again, going to be a very tough game for them with the Springbok um, front row for the Bulls. So interesting there. I'm sure they'll be wanting to put up a fight against one of the toughest front row in at least South African rugby. Moving into your locks, Jason Jenkins and Emil van Heerden, same as last weekend. Siya Kolisi, Chituka, and Buthelezi keeping their position. So pretty much an unchanged forward pack for the Sharks from last weekend. Moving on to the back line, we have Grant Williams keeping his position. Great game last weekend. And again, the Sharks' best player, I think, at the moment. And then Jordan Hendrickse coming into the 10 position, moving up from the bench. Interesting selection considering the game that George Whitehead played last weekend, but I'm sure that the Sharks will. Yeah, I'm going to assume they're changing their game plan slightly. Um, I'm not sure what the thinking is there, but Jordan Hendrickse, I do think is potentially a very good player. Obviously, quite a physical guy. Not really. I don't think I've seen him manage a game very, very well yet. So I think that'll come with a bit of experience, but massive boot on him as well. So I don't know if the thinking is going to be, we want to play the territory game against the Bulls. Obviously, with Jordan Hendrick's big boot, try and get them pinned back into their own half and put the pressure on like that. And then an unchanged 11 to 14, Mapimpi, Esterhuizen, Hooker, and then Edward van der Merwe there. Dangerous centre combination, I think, especially against the Bulls' centre combination. The quality, and Andre Esterhuizen, I think, is probably playing his best rugby at the moment. Massive guy, difficult to stop. So I think it's difficult to stop a combination of Ethan Hooker and Andre Esterhuizen, considering the size of them. Really big guys. And yeah, I think it's going to take two guys per player there, and that could potentially cause overlaps quite often against our defense, against the Bulls' defense. And then Hakeem Kunene moving to fullback with Fassi, of course, getting the knock last weekend in the second half. We have Kunene going to the 15. I think it's a smart choice. Obviously, someone who knows the position, knows how to play 15. I think it's better than, in my opinion, dropping someone like Jordan Hendrickse or Edward van der Merwe or Joop Bentley into that position. So I think that's a good choice. So it's probably one that I probably would have made as well. Moving on to the bench, pretty similar from last weekend. Edwin Swart, Mazibuko, and Ndanda. Marvin Ori on the lock. Matt Romeo, Nick Hatton. Also going with the 6-2 split. Jaden Hendrickse and George Whitehead covering the backline positions there. So interesting game. I think moving on to the predictions, I do see a win for the Stormers, as I mentioned previously. And then, I think on paper the Bulls probably have the better side, but on form, I don't actually think anyone's better, to be honest with you, on form. So, being a Bulls supporter, I would probably guess the Bulls. At the Shark Tank, it's going to be very difficult, but I think the Bulls' quality should come through, especially considering the quality of players that they do have, especially in the forwards. I do expect a dominant performance when it comes to the forward pack for the Bulls. But I think where the Sharks will be quite dangerous will be Andre Esterhuizen and Ethan Hooker. I think that's where their danger points lie. And if they do end up beating the Bulls, I'm sure that that combination will play an absolutely massive role when it comes to beating the Bulls. So um, I am going to go with the Bulls victory, just based purely on slight bias, I suppose, but also I think quality on the park and on paper would edge the Bulls over the Sharks, considering neither team has been in very good form. So I certainly can't go off of that. But yeah, I think that's it for this episode, the preview of the sideline breakdown for this weekend's um, South African derbies. Let us know what you think in the comments. Who do you think is going to take it? Who do you think between the Bulls and the Sharks is the better team? And who do you think is going to take the win? I think form again. No one can really go on form. So yeah, let us know your predictions. And thanks for listening. We'll see you again.